We've seen stories like this before, but here's another example of a story from this one happens to be from St. Petersburg, Tampa area in Florida, about a family who purchased an electric vehicle and found out that the battery replacement was problematic, to say the least. It's another really good reason why it's important, if you're buying a used EV, to make sure that the battery is in good condition. In the same way you would check out brake, shocks, um, transmission, engine on a gasoline vehicle, you want to check out that battery on a used vehicle to make sure it's good, because here's what could happen. They bought a vehicle from a dealership, and very soon afterwards they found out that the battery wasn't charging properly. They took it in for an estimate, and they said it would cost $14,000 to replace the car's battery. But that's not the worst news. It gets worse. Wait. Um, they took it in. It was a 17-year-old owner of this vehicle. It was their first car. And they paid $11,000 for the vehicle. It was a Ford Focus electric, a 2014 model with 60,000 miles. Now, remember that. Most of these vehicles have 100,000 mile battery warranties, but they usually max out at 8 years. So the time has expired on that 8 years. What happened with the vehicle? It was fine at first. I loved it so much. It was small, quiet. All of a sudden, it stopped working. She had her car for 6 months before the dashboard started to light up with problematic alerts. So there's other family problems. The father died from cancer, the grandfather, that kind of thing. It's, these are personal struggles which don't really have to do with the car, but it makes the problem worse. So they brought the car into AutoNation, a Ford dealer, and they got a quote. It said the battery would cost $14,000, which is more than they paid for the whole car. Plus, that quote did not include installation and labor costs. So that's a problem. But it gets worse. Then they found out from the parts department that batteries aren't even available. They stopped making that model of vehicle a few years ago, and when they did that, they stopped making the spare batteries for the vehicle. What happened? Well, the dealership offered to buy the car for $500. So the moral of the story, and this is what the owner said, if you're buying a used vehicle, do your research before buying electric. It may cost more than you realize. And this is something that we've seen many, many times, where a low mileage electric vehicle may have a battery that's already beyond its service limit, where a high mileage one could be just fine. We've seen electric vehicles with 200,000 or 300,000 miles with the original battery that's working just fine. And in this case, a 60,000 mile battery, which is low miles for a vehicle, has a battery that's failed. What's the difference? It's all about the usage. It's how many charge cycles, how many severe charge cycles, how many fast charges were done, how many run down to zero cycles were done. Was it in hot weather, cold weather, right? Those are all factors which you're not going to know just by looking at the odometer. You have to do some testing, you have to do some checkout of the battery, and to make sure that the range is still there and the longevity is still there. So lesson learned, if you're buying a used EV, make sure you get the vehicle properly checked out and the battery evaluated, so you don't end up with a repair bill that's more than the car, so you have to throw away the car.